Hello, comrades. So, a lot of life has happened for me over the last week or so, and I've decided to take a short break, which is why you didn't see an upload this week until this weekend upload. And I want to tell you that I have a couple of really cool projects coming up that I have multiple collaborators in that are going to be really interesting. One of them is a deep look into toxic masculinity that involves a lot of interviews that I've been putting together for a while. It is a project that I always think is going to be done, and then there's just a little bit more, and every little bit more makes the video richer and better. So I'm kind of happy that it's taken this long because it's just given it time to age and mature as a video. But I have other content that I'm working on that will be released next week, just in case that one isn't finished yet, but I want to release that one next week. In the meantime, let's have a slightly less serious conversation about a nostalgic pastime for a lot of us, especially of my generation, and that's Pokemon. And the reason that I'm bringing up Pokemon today is that I think that there is a really interesting controversy going on, and what makes it interesting is where some people have sided on it. Because some of the same right-wing gamer bros that are anti-immigration, anti-feminism, that jumped into Gamergate, all of that stuff, are angry with Game Freak and Nintendo and the Pokemon Company right now for the idea of implementing a national dex, which means that they will be limiting the number of Pokemon from previous generations that will be in this newest game. And the reason that I find that interesting is that this is something that kind of amounts to like a digital refugee crisis. And you see that in the memes, which are great. It seems like to me, with the metaphor for immigration being this obvious, that they would realize that they're asking a private company to shell out extra money, hiring extra people, expending extra resources to animate all of these Pokemon that we've grown to know and love. It's interesting to me that these people are asking for a private company to expend extra resources just so that they're guaranteed their Charizards and their Bidoofs. And yet, they don't see the real value in having actual governments expend resources to actually try to help refugees. And to do what we can to make the world a better place through allowing immigration and allowing people to come to places where they can have better lives if they want them. Because it seems like the stakes are so much lower in the Pokemon scenario that the real human cost of their policies on immigration and refugees, if they can see the detriment of not having every Dratini and Seadra and Magnemite, then maybe they can also understand that Raul and Alexa and Alejandro all want a chance at better lives and a better place in a way that actually affects them a lot more than a video game is going to affect you. But the other reason that I find this interesting is that some of the arguments that have come out to support Game Freak have gone in the other direction, and I think that there's some interesting metaphors in some of these arguments that show a little bit of the underlying human condition that exists here. So there's a couple of different ways that you can go in supporting this idea, but the general idea is that the more focused the more focused the Pokédex, the fewer Pokemon that they have to interact with in this game, the more refined a game they can make it, the more they can have control of gameplay style and your gameplay experience, the better they can really design each of these new creatures and all the new systems that they want to put in place. So it seems like getting rid of some of the old baggage that the Pokemon Company has built up is a good idea. But where these arguments differ, and where they become interesting to me, is who do you get rid of? Because one camp says that because of power creep, there are a lot of Pokemon that just don't need to show up in another game. You have your Farfetch'ds, your Sunkerns, stuff like that. This to me sounds a whole lot like justifications for eugenics, essentially. I don't want to see mentally handicapped people. I don't want them to exist. Let's put them away, let's sterilize them, let's make sure they don't make any more of them because I never want to see them again. In this game or any future game. Just get rid of them. They're useless. And I realize that it's a big jump from saying that you don't need Farfetch'd in the next Pokemon game to we need to sterilize people who are mentally handicapped. But you can see where the seeds of that thought might come from. Another argument that I find kind of interesting in the way that it overlaps with real world things is people who believe that maybe we need to roll back a little bit. Maybe we need to remove some things that were added to the game. Maybe a whole type of Pokemon needs to be removed because of what it did to the metagame balance. And yes, I'm talking about Fairy type. For some reason, there is a subset of the Pokemon community that absolutely hates Fairy type. And I think I understand why. It's not just because they're cute and they're pink and they're actually a pretty powerful type within the metagame. It's because they have a complete immunity to dragons. And up until the point that Fairy types were released, dragons took over most of the legendary slots. They were objectively the most powerful Pokemon and one of the most powerful types in the game. So having a cute little pink Pokemon that can completely resist its damage and turn the tables on it, I guess it's kind of emasculating to people who were kind of dragon supremacists, who believed that there was one true masterclass of Pokemon and that it was dragons. And suddenly, this removal of their privilege in this overpowered position amounts to what feels like to them to be violence. And they don't like it. Because any removal of privilege from a privileged group is going to be met with outcry, even if that removal of privilege is to better balance the overall experience for all players, or all people experiencing, in the case of real life. This actually happened in Generation 2 as well. It was a smaller controversy because the whole supremacist attitude hadn't had time to set in. But in the first game, for a number of reasons, psychic types were overpowered, including having one of the most powerful Pokemon to date, being a psychic type. But also, even in future generations, many of the legendaries, if they weren't dragons, were psychic type. But in Generation 2, they introduced Dark type, which had a complete immunity to psychic, and some people said that it ruined the game completely. Because they had, presumably, built psychic type teams and plowed through the first game, and when they came to the second and realized that that was no longer a valid playstyle, that they would actually have to develop some strategy instead of just using an overpowered type, well, I guess most of those people just started catching dragons instead. And the metagame didn't catch up with them until fairies were introduced, and now they're mad again. But it just goes to show how privilege works, and how the removal of privilege can be seen as violence to the privileged class, even when it isn't. And why we have the reactions that we do, like this idea of white genocide. It is an overreaction. Most definitely. There are actual genocides happening in the world right now, and to call what is happening to white people in privileged countries a genocide is utterly fucking ridiculous. But then there's a final justification that could remove maybe 100 or 150 Pokemon from the overall Pokédex that, as a fan and as kind of a moral standpoint, I can get behind. If power creep has been happening, let's remove the overpowered Pokemon. We don't need, it also lowers the power ceiling a bit and allows weaker Pokemon to be more competitive in the overall metagame when they're not instantly outclassed by these uber tier creatures. It allows an opportunity for fun strategies to be implemented. And another thing that I really like in conjunction with this is lifting up some of those Pokemon that one of the previous ideas would have had removed. Maybe by giving them new abilities that make up for their terrible stats, or just giving them decent movesets for once. That could breathe a world of difference into some of these weaker or useless Pokemon. And the reason why I feel like I can stand behind saying that even about this game is because I would stand behind it in the real world as well. People don't need to be able to accumulate base stats to the point where they are completely overpowered and can destroy everything else. Or just own everything else. LOL. And I think that we should do more to lift up people who have disadvantages. Because I think that freedom is the active removal of disadvantages or handicaps so that you can have the most full possible experience in life. For a person who cannot walk, freedom is a wheelchair. For a person in poverty, money can be freedom. And for a Pokemon in poverty, having a decent speed stat could help. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And I hope you enjoyed my weird little rant about Pokemon and immigration. And found it as amusing as I did.
Alright, you know what to do by now. It's YouTube. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the links in the description.